Well, it's so good to be with you. I'm Tara Matson, your host for the Courageous Girls podcast. I'm also the founder of Courageous Girls and have done all the curriculum written specifically to you moms who are doing Courageous Girls. If you're not in a Courageous Girls group, welcome. I'm so glad you're here because we're talking about all things girls, what it means to be a woman who really knows she's loved by God and what He says about her, and then knows how to love others well. And so today we're going to talk about how to actually love our bodies and the struggle that we have as women to really care for the body that we've been given. And so many of us live with so much shame. We normalize really unhealthy patterns and habits. And so to join me in this conversation, I invited Rachael Joy Gilbert, who is a mom. She's got two daughters and a son. She's married, but she's also a licensed counselor and has written a book around this specific topic. So I wanted to invite her to come in and dialogue. Welcome, Rachel.
Thanks, Tara, for having me.
Yeah, so I would love for us to just start, Rachel, with just your own journey with body image. I have my own story as well. I'm sure everyone listening has their own story. But I think it helps when the women just say, okay, we're sitting amongst friends and human beings who get it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like much like most of us, my story started young without me quite realizing it until I got a little older and looked back and saw it, being weaved along the way. And so growing up,
Mm.
I was always a little bit chubby. I was, in comparison to my other girlfriends, just a little bit on the heavier side. And it's interesting right away. I see the comparison that just creeped right in of, I look a little bit different than her just right off the bat. And it wasn't until I got into high school where I had a abnormal hip injury. My growth plates were actually growing apart rather than together, which was just very odd. The doctors really weren't sure what to do about it other than they told me to stop playing basketball, which play was a strong word. I warmed the bench, but I was there with my friends doing it. And he also said to me, basically as I was walking out the door, and also it'd be good for you to lose some weight. And I'm thinking that never even crossed my mind of how to lose weight or, could I even control that or whatever. And so I stopped drinking sodas and stopped eating candy bars. And within about a month, I lost about 30 pounds, which for a 5'4" girl really just completely changed the shape of my body. And I remember it like it was yesterday of like walking down the halls of my high school as a sophomore. And for the first time in my life, experiencing attention from boys, attention from even girls, like, oh, you look so great, and teachers, and all of this positive affirmation. And in that season is really a lie just creeped in of, okay, in order to get accepted, in order to be loved, you need to look a certain way. And so I started to develop some really unhealthy habits. The weight fell off. That's the one first and only time in my life weight just fell off within a month like that. And just started to do some, very unhealthy habits that did after going through some traumatic things actually turned into an eating disorder. And all of this was happening when people were telling me how great I looked, but they didn't know how in bondage I was internally. They didn't know the things I was doing to keep that weight off and the hidden shame that was surrounding that and the pain that I was trying to cover it up. And so it really wasn't until I got married and I got pregnant that this just really came into the light. And my husband was the first one to see some of my behaviors that weren't very healthy and the way, just the things I was going through. And him and my doctor at the time were the ones who addressed it with me. And it really just got brought into the light. And so obviously there's a lot more stories in between all that, but that's just the overarching view of how it kind of started young without me realizing it, thinking my worth, maybe not feeling like enough, if you will, and then thinking, oh, wow, I finally have it. And then I was terrified to lose it.
Mm, that's so good. Thank you for sharing, Rachel. And I just think you're naming some of these key factors that really play a role in all of our lives, particularly in Western culture. We have an overt focus on, pretty teeth and everybody gets braces but even the comments people would say of, oh, you look so pretty today, and noticing when somebody loses weight, wow, you look great, versus when their body is maybe a little bit more curvy or in a different shape. the doctor saying you need to lose weight, and how heavy that is for a teenage girl. And those are things I don't think he meant it in any sort of a, you know, to start a problem or a concern. But those are the kinds of things that should happen in our lives that we can't control, especially as moms of raising daughters. It's happening all over the place. Comments made on TV, comments made in the halls at school. And so we've got a battle to really focus in on how do we see ourselves as Psalm 139 says, and fearfully, and I'm wonderfully made, and also care for our bodies in a way so that it's functioning and healthy, um, regardless of its size. So that's really the context of what we're going to talk about today. My own journey, people have read about it. If you read my book, Courageous, I share I struggled with bulimia. And my journey was really interesting because I think about lots of people commented on my looks, my family. Like the common thing was, oh, you're so pretty, right? And so I don't remember anyone ever saying, you're ugly. But that internal comparison game that you talked about, like there was always, I was more curvier than all my peers. I developed earlier. And the overt focus on my outer appearance, I think made it, I was vulnerable to that obsession. And in turn, I really liked food, but I was an athlete. And so I've stumbled upon the bulimia habits that became addictive, from a neural pathway, and then spent many years really hiding that behavior. So I understand what it's like to get to the extreme. And then for decades, wrestling with just the normal, like, I want to fit good in my jeans, trying to count calories. I don't do any of that now. And I'm going to confess that in the end here, Rachel, but it took a lot of years to get there. So,
Mhm.
Rachel, you wrote a book called Image Restored, and you really walk women through the process of really finding health and joy with your body. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you share around why women are vulnerable here, maybe a little bit more than men.
Yeah. When I was so obviously I have my personal story. And then when I was in grad school, I decided to do some research around this topic. I thought, hey, let's research this and make it a big capstone project. And I developed a curriculum around it for one of my classes. And I found this really cool research article that was actually a secular article. But it was a professional journal article that found that a secure attachment to God actually improves your body image. And again, this is like from a secular view. And so I feel like as women, especially, I mean, I see, again, you can go all the way back to the garden where it's that voice of you're not enough or you're too much. And like I said, even in my own story, and we see this over again, and even in my research that I did in grad school showed this that we just are constantly doing this comparison thing, right? Like me as a little girl recognizing, "Oh, she's bigger or she's smaller than me," right? I didn't even need somebody to say that to me out loud. I just interpreted that on my own. I didn't need help. And then, of course, when you add people saying to it, then that just makes it even worse. And so I do think so much of it comes back to the root of the enemy knows if he can disconnect us from our creator, our secure, connection from the creator, well, then everything becomes like this open territory for him to kind of just lie to us about our worth and our value. And like I said, some women believe I'm not enough, some I'm too much, and just this constant, like chronic striving, right? Going, oh, if I could only, and it makes me think about The Greatest Showman, that song, Never Enough, like it is. Cause even as I get older, gone are the days for me of like trying to fit into a certain size or whatever. I think just as you
Mhm.
get older, there's a little bit of I don't have time for that. I'm like
That's fair.
there's a million other things that I'm worried about to than to worry about my size. But Now in comes, oh, wrinkles, or oh, here comes,
Mhm.
there's always something new. And so that's where that never enough. It's like if we stay on that hamster wheel of striving and let me earn and let me prove to people that I'm something and that I do deserve a seat at this table, then it's always going to be something new, something new, something new. If we don't go to the root and go back to that secure connection.
Yeah. It's interesting, Rachel. Yes, I love the idea of secure attachment. I'm an attachment therapist, so that just sings my praises. And a lot of the work we're doing in Courageous Girls is building a secure attachment with God, and then between mom and daughters. We also know if you have one good attachment here in this human life, there's so many benefits in the way that you see yourself, in your confidence. So, first, before we move from secure attachment, talk about what you mean when you say a secure attachment with God.
Yeah, I mean, just a relationship with him, right? I know for me, everybody has their own story when it comes to their relationship with God. And it's the more we are in constant communication with him, praying, spending time in his word, like actually meditating on verses that, you mentioned Psalm 139 a little bit ago, taking those verses and letting it be what we meditate on. Because most of us are meditating on negative thoughts about ourselves all day, right? Until we learn not to. And so, even that is a secure attachment to God to say, hey, I know my brain has this negative thought pattern on repeat about myself that I'm not enough, right? Let's just use that example. What if I actually went to God's word and I found a scripture of what he says about me and I put that on repeat, then that is going to improve my attachment to him because now that record that's playing in my head is what is God saying about me versus what is the world saying, what have, people spoken over me, or what are just some internal beliefs that are negative beliefs that I need to reframe with God's word.
Yeah. It reminds me like when I was a sophomore in college, I had a mentor who had challenged me to meditate on Psalm 139. It's part of why it's rooted into all of the Courageous Girls curriculum. It's really profound for me. But she just said for 90 days, this is before I understood neuroscience, this is before I understood how we change neural pathways and the neuroplasticity of the brain. I just was like, okay, I'll focus on. And so I wrote out Psalm 139, 13, and 14 on my mirror. And for 90 days, every time I was looking in the mirror doing my makeup or getting dressed, this is my dorm room, I am meditating on this scripture. And it was really amazing to me because after 90 days, I had struggled with that voice. You're ugly. And I would spend much energy trying to not be ugly. And after 90 days, I remember the clear shift of like, I am I'm fearfully and I'm wonderfully made. Like I know that full well. And I felt it from the down to my toes. And it was interesting because I didn't get a nose job, which I was really big on my nose. I have a big mole that some people think is great. I didn't think it was great at the time. I did get my mole removed. I didn't lose any weight. I didn't get my hair done. There was nothing that changed except that I had meditated on what God says about me for 90 days. And it transformed the way I could see myself in the mirror. It's so profound to this day. I can remember exactly where I was when that happened. And so that is one of the significant pieces that you're helping women with is to really hold on to what God says about them. What have been some of the practices that you have done in your own journey as you've been trying to also have a healthy relationship with your body?
Yeah, I love one thing that was really helpful to me, and I do write about this in the book too, is starting to just get real about our relationship with our body, which this might be new vocab for some people and it's might be feel a little awkward at first when you think of it this way, but I like to just look at my body and say, do I believe that she is a friend, an acquaintance, or an enemy? Right. And for most of us, I know for me, most of my life, definitely through my even into late 20s, probably, I viewed her as an enemy. Like, you're the problem. You need to get in line. You're going to, I don't care if you're hurting. You take another lap around the block because we got to run off this cookie, right? It was just silencing. We were silencing the body for so many years. And so for me and for, those listening, the first step is going, okay, where do I currently sit? Not in a shame-based posture, even if you're like me and like, yeah, I probably would say enemy. Okay, let's move her into acquaintance land. Let's move into, hey, let's get to know each other. Let me start to listen to some of my cues, right? Especially, if an eating is disorder or disordered eating at all is in your past, learning to listen to hunger cues is a simple thing, right? We constantly were silencing. That was my thing. I would starve myself and things. And so learning, I'm hungry. Okay, body, what do we need? Do we need water? Do we need, like just paying attention to those cues that your body is giving? And then, of course, we want to get into the friend zone, right? Where, like, hey, we're just talking. Like, I trust you when you say, oh, I'm hungry. Okay. I'm actually going to listen to you rather than argue with you or tell you, sorry, you can't have that. Right. And so that, like, it's super simple, but just it's really restoring the relationship with the body so that when your body gives its natural cues to say, hey, I'm tired or I'm hungry or whatever the thing might be, we actually listen and we lean into it and get curious, not judgmental or anything like that, but just get curious and go, okay, what is this? And that then can drive healthy habits like exercise, like the way we eat, like our sleep patterns, because to just jump into a new exercise program when you're currently in enemy status with your body, I don't, it might not produce the best results for you. And you might find yourself, especially with women, with, hormone problems and thyroid issues and all of this because we're dry. That was me, honestly, for years. My hormones were all out of whack because I was driving my body so hard that I was pushing it too hard. And then it did the opposite. You might hear this a lot with women, especially. They're like, I work out 7 days a week. I barely eat anything and I can't lose weight. Yeah, because there's a major dysfunction happening between your body right now.
That's right. It's so
Yeah,
good. We need those of us who are aging too, like we start to learn when do I need a day just to rest and go
yeah,
slower versus a day where I might need to move at a quicker pace. The more we practice this, and we can teach our daughters how to do this, so they see their bodies as friends rather than the enemy or the acquaintance. And when you're talking about the cues, I automatically go, this is my trauma therapy hat, to the body keeps score, and it's where our emotions actually show up. We do a lot of teaching our girls and courageous girls how to listen to their emotions and how it actually shows up in your body. So, like, you're sad, you might feel it right here underneath your, eyes, or you might feel it in your chest. If you're stressed, you might feel it in your neck. Speak to what you see as the correlation between emotions and actually how we're treating our bodies. Maybe I'm almost thinking the middle one where it's a acquaintance. Like, I really don't want to get too involved with you. I see
hmm
maybe you're sad, but I don't really have the time for you right now.
yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you're touching on a very important topic of emotions because I don't feel like that's something that we're taught much about growing up. And there's no classes in school on emotions, and unfortunately, most adults don't even know how to handle emotions because they weren't taught, right? And so emotions then also go into that land of that feels scary and overwhelming, and I don't know what to do with you. And so that can be part of the shutting down, for example, going from enemy to acquaintance, that will feel a little vulnerable, even emotionally, right? Because for some people, some of these behaviors, you said this in your own story, um, some of these behaviors aren't always related to I just want to lose weight. Sometimes it's a coping thing, right? And it's actually you're tending to your emotions through that behavior. And so that is where learning those and I don't know that I'm answering your question necessarily so much, but just even going back to the if you find yourself stuck in, well, I want to move, I want to have that good relationship with my body, and it doesn't just feel like, oh, I can snap my fingers and do it. That's okay because you are going to have to, maybe take a look at how well am I able to handle and process and be in tune with my emotions, just the base level there, before I can necessarily ask myself to move in to that space. Because if you even think about some of these things around our body, like for example, if you ever said when you were, if you've ever said in a group of women, "Oh, I feel fat." Well, most women, well meaning, will say, "Oh, you shouldn't feel fat. You look great," right? We're telling them you shouldn't feel a certain way. Of course, we're just building each other up, and that's great. We want friends to build each other up. But if you look, sometimes we can tell each other how you should or shouldn't feel versus let's just get curious about what is this. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I definitely felt like you brought up a great point about the emotion part of it for
No,
sure.
you are, and it makes me think, again, the cue when you were talking about paying attention, for me, my journey was a lot of, okay, when am I hungry? What am I hungry for? Not just going from A to B of like grabbing something. And the second was, am I feeling something? And so
Mhm.
that numbing emotions, a lot of my clients over the years who have maybe struggled maybe with overeating or overweight, their body is holding, I will say are often more sensitive people. And they're
Mhm.
often caretakers who are holding everybody else's emotions.
Yep.
And they haven't learned how to process their own, let alone all the ones that they're carrying. And so the body will hold that, and so there's just a part of the journey is also to be able to tune in and to say, what am I feeling? And how can I care for that feeling in a way than just, eating a pint of ice cream or, swinging by Taco
Mhm.
Bell or the things that I might have done in the past. And so the piece that's on this side. The other side is sometimes we can be overly healthy, meaning our family is so focused on what we eat, our body, our exercise, our movement, and our patterns that it's more important than even our spiritual life or freedom or learning how to keep in step with the spirit. So let's talk about that side of the coin where it becomes, especially in Christian homes, sometimes we can be overly focused. I love sourdough bread, and I used to make my own kombucha and like I'm in Oregon. I just say that. We have a lot of us who kind of over focus sometimes on health and wholeness for our bodies, trying to prevent cancer. There's all these other kinds of things that it ends up wrapping into, and I think it's still the same root. Um, and I just want us to talk a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up because that's actually something my husband and I went through when he's a chiropractor, and so when he went to chiropractic school, I mean, they're just inundated with like how
Oh
horrible
yeah.
everything is, and I mean, and so it was actually we kind of joke about it now, but he lost a ton of weight when he was in there because he stopped eating grains, he stopped eating like he did all this, and so we had a little season there where we were pretty intense. I mean it in on how we were eating and things like that. And some of the changes were positive and we still keep today. Like one, for example, thing that he learned is called fresh fiber first, which just means with any meal, just eat a piece of fresh fiber with it, right? Like it helps you digest it quicker and you're going to fill up a little quicker. That's just a nice, healthy tip that we implemented even with our kids. And they all still just naturally do it on their own now because they're just used to it. And so those are some things that were, yeah, those are little things that were great things to keep. But what we started to notice, and we're definitely not this way now, maybe we've probably swung a little too far the other way, but is that it anytime you notice, even if it's a good change, like eating healthier, like exercising, if it is starting to rob you of things that you value, like for example, there was a season where we'd be at a family meal and Matt or I would be like, "Do you know what ingredients is in here?" Like instead of talking about having a nice, healthy family conversation, just about, hey, how are you doing? Tell me about your life. When we're talking about the ingredients, or, oh, I'm sorry, I can't have that because XYZ. Now, again, hear me. If you have a food allergy or whatever, I'm not shaming that. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. But for us, it just definitely swung over too extreme to where it was robbing us of joy, time, finances, relationships. Like we just started to see, I don't think that the health benefits outweigh how extreme we've gone on this. And so we definitely had to have a balance with that. And I think that's just a heart posture. I think that's just asking the Holy Spirit, what does this look like for our family right now? And, I know sometimes God will call us to seasons of giving up certain things and whatnot. And if He calls us to give it up, then that's great. And we're going to do it in His strength. And it's not going to rob us of anything. We're not going to lose our peace in the process or something like that. But I'm glad you brought that up because I do see us, slap the verse, and I even talk a little bit about this in the book, but don't you know that your body is a temple, right? And so Christians can, really use that as an excuse to kind of make it an obsession, if you will, when really God asks us to steward it, whatever that looks like for us in that season.
So good. Yeah. So when we say body image, we're thinking whole. I mean, there's so much we can talk about, Rachel. So I'm trying to keep us somewhat on a
Yeah.
path here. But, we're working on like, how do you care for your hair and your skin and your body, your guts, what you eat? Are you moving your body? All these things are a part of building a healthy body image. How do you think about yourself? Actually, what do you say about your body? So I loved so I want to kind of speak to that a little bit because I think it's one of the main coaching areas I have to help a lot of moms with because little ears are listening all the time. And especially as the girls get into the middle school and high school years, they adopt this language that women everywhere say. You were talking about, someone saying, I feel fat. That's just a normal thing that people say all the time. And so, how do we start capturing what we say about ourselves? And if you have any tips on words we can use, kind of like the fresh fiber first tip, what tips would you say, moms, say this instead of the go tos?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, sometimes we have to, um, be mindful of not just what we're saying, and we've been talking about this a little bit, but also what we're thinking, meaning, sometimes we are acting in a certain way that and I'm saying this from personal experience. When I was a younger mom, I was very mindful with my girls to not say, "Oh, I feel so fat," or whatever, because I just kinda knew, I don't think that's very good for them to hear mom say that about herself, right? I just knew that's probably not the best thing. However, it was still in my head. I was still thinking, "I'm so fat." And so I'm doing these, body checking and different things that my girls are watching me do. And so to your point that of just really taking a thought inventory as well as a, what we're saying inventory. And I also like to really premise this for moms with this. Seriously, when you're looking at this, no shame or don't expect perfection from yourself. The key is, do we circle back around and take ownership? Right. And so times for me with my girls where I have maybe did say something or I was acting a certain way, and for me to circle back around and go, "Hey, when I said that, I don't, that was wrong. That is not what God sees in me." Like me just, making that relational repair, right? And going, owning up to that. That's not the best way to think about it. Or, when I made that comment, that really, that's just not honoring. And that's not the truth of what God says over me. And so just them hearing mom wrestle it, right? Like them getting to watch mom wrestle through, "Oh, here it comes." So it's not that I don't know that we ever just fully eliminate any negative body talk or self-talk or things like that, but we do get to where we recognize it a lot quicker and we're able to, just have a positive impact in that way with our girls on that way.
Mm, that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you really pointed to that. So, grace, and then also really thinking about our thought life and doing the meditation piece.
Yeah.
Some language that I used, quite a bit, that saying that people will say is, finish everything on your plate because somebody, is out there
Mm.
starving.
Mhm.
Like, um, we chopped that one from our home. And there's a lot I could say about that one, but I often would say, we're walking through, they're serving them plate, take a little bit of everything first and start there. Don't fill your plate if you're especially if you're too hungry, you probably needed to snack a little bit before. So we're working on that as we're growing through the girls are growing up. But saying things like, listen to your tummy to feel full, going slower, and then talking a lot about how great our bodies are. Like, isn't it so great that we get to play soccer? Like those strong legs of yours, or when I work out, saying out loud, like, not about calories or, weights or the scale, but more of like, I'm working out so I can be strong, so I can move the things on our property, or I'm so grateful I can pick you up just because I lift weights. So
Yeah.
even if I'm not exactly happy with the size of pants I'm in at the time, the thought life can sometimes follow even how we speak truth out loud, but being very thoughtful about how we talk about our bodies and how we talk about when we're eating, um, and recognizing that kids are picking up these habits from home. All of us did. So if we struggle with body image issues, we picked it up from our house growing up somewhere along the way. And so thinking very thoughtfully about how we want to language, how we talk about our bodies, they're good. They're
Yeah.
so good, and they help us serve God and do the things that we love, and not all of us have the abilities. Some of us are very limited, right? So when we have health, I always talk about how grateful we are, versus seasons where people have terminal illnesses, the flu, I mean, all kinds of things that can happen. So practicing gratitude in that way is a really important thing. What would you say is something that you and Matt have done as well?
Yeah, I love flipping it of the positive. One thing I feel like we have done well and that I've done, and if you're a mom listening today here thinking, I've never done any work around this topic of body image, doing it starts with us, right? I know for me having daughters, me doing my work around my body image and improving it and even some of my story, me getting healthy and well, then when I'm able to with my daughters, I have shared stories with both of them about my struggles and about the things I've gone through. And that in itself, me being open and honest with them about, hey, you're not weird if you think like this. If something is going on with you or if you're tempted to do that, that's pretty normal. Like I went through it. Most women at some point in their lives go through it. And the only way we're able to have those conversations with them is if we have done our work on the back end first, right? To even feel comfortable to have those kinds of conversations. I'll never forget, I was counseling a woman and she has given me permission to share the story because it's so powerful. She had told me a story. We were doing some EMDR and she told me a story about how she was 6 years old and she was watching her mom get ready. And she was looking at how beautiful her mom was. She was like, wow, she's so pretty. Oh my goodness. Like she was just admiring how pretty her mom was. And she said, all of a sudden, my mom slammed her brush on the counter and said, oh, I'm so ugly. And, this little girl looked in the mirror and thought, I look just like my mom." Like, she's like, "I look just like her, so I must be ugly too, right?" And I don't share this story again as shame-based. I do say it as we get the chance, just like you said, Tara, as moms to go, "Okay, let me look back on my life and hear what story." It may not be mom, it could have been at school, it could have been, all kinds of places. It's not, always mom or something, but it just looking at our stories and saying what shaped me and where I might need to do some work around that and get healing for myself, so that then I'm not just white knuckling it, and what I say to my daughters is actually truth of what's coming out of my heart, right? It's like that's actually my story, and that doesn't happen overnight because that's what I want people to know too. And so that's what I've told my girls. You asked for practical. I'm like, I talk to them about the things I've wrestled through and then try to be that open door for them that, hey, I'm not going to shame you if you come to me and say you're struggling with this or whatever. I want you to feel like if you're struggling, let's talk about it. Let's just let me walk alongside you in that.
Mhm. So good. And that is a huge factor, right? Confessing it out loud.
Yeah.
Healthy attachment's even ideal, right? And then really being able to have somebody walk with you through it. It's going to keep it from
Yeah.
going spiraling too far out. But many of us who listening might have not only our own stories that we need to work through, but our daughters might be really struggling, and it's okay to get somebody on the team to ask for professional help to be able to come in and do the healing. And Rachel, you and I are both women who have healed a lot, and so it's possible. We believe deeply in it. So, talk a little bit about how women can find your book and really what your hope is for those that read it.
Yeah, you can find the book on Amazon. Also, if you just want to learn more about it and see the book trailer and all that, if you go to my website, racheljoygilbert.com, there's a book page there. Also, on my resources, there is a quiz called What's Your Body Trying to Tell You? And it is kind of helps you with that starter conversation of where am I now on listening to my body and tuning in. Yeah, and my heart for the book is just to be a great place, not only for resources, but it is process style, meaning you get to journal, you get to color. I mean, a lot of moms and daughters actually enjoy using the book together, especially the girls get excited about the coloring piece. And it's really great conversation starters, right? If you're listening and you're going, I've never had that kind of conversation with my daughter and you don't know where to start, that this would be a great place. Just you have somebody who laid it out for you. So now you don't have to wonder, what should I say or how should I bring that up? Now you get to the end of the chapter and there's some questions there that you can sit and discuss together and it'd be really fun.
Fantastic. How old would you say the daughter should be if you're going to do this with her?
Yeah, probably more a teenager, I would say,
Yeah,
and older.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
good. Thank you. And before we go, I just want everybody to know about your new adventure, the Rachel Joy Show. So tell women where they can a little bit about that and what's coming.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to go again to that website and click to get show updates there, it's a television show. It's going to be on all kinds of different streaming platforms. And so if you just go to my website there, you can connect with it. And our first series is called How Is Your Heart? And we address how it's a question that changes everything. And of course, Tara was one of our amazing guests. So her episode was so powerful. You definitely don't want to miss
Mhm.
that one too.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel, for being with me today. And um, mamas, this is a key part of our journey and learning how to be courageous and to really trust God with what he says about himself and what he says about us. And we're freed up. The more that we're freed up to just accept the temples that we're in, to care for them as friends. I love that language, Rachel. To care for them as friends. The more we can look up and out and care for those around us with authenticity and integrity. But it is a journey. It takes intentionality. And I just want to say there's hope. So wherever you're at in that journey, thank you for continuing to be a mama who says yes to this journey to walk with your daughter intentionally, whether you're doing a Courageous Girls group or you're just tuning in to these podcasts right now. I'm praying for you specifically and always here cheering you on. You are the right mama for the job. We'll see you next time.